The F-35 was designed to integrate perfectly with American radar satellites and fighter jets, all data shared in real time, one unified fleet, one command system. That's what the Pentagon told NATO for the last 15 years. But while Trump was threatening Canada with tariffs and statehood jokes, Mark Carney made a decision in Ottawa that Washington never saw coming. Review the entire F-35 deal, put $14 billion on the table, and force Sweden's Gripen back into the conversation. And the Pentagon? They're watching their Arctic control strategy collapse in real time. This isn't about aircraft specifications. This is about Mark Carney dismantling 40 years of American defense monopoly in a single policy review. And NATO planners are scrambling to understand what just happened, because Carney didn't just question a contract, he exposed a vulnerability the Pentagon spent decades trying to hide. Let's rewind to where this started. January 2023. After a decade of debate, Canada finally chose the F-35. Lockheed Martin celebrated. The Pentagon breathed easy. 88 aircraft, $19 billion Canadian dollars. Everything seemed settled. For Washington, this wasn't just another arms deal. This was confirmation. Confirmation that even when allies had options, they still chose American technology, still chose American control, still chose dependency. The F-35 program represents the largest defense contract in human history. Over 3,000 aircraft planned for production, 15 NATO countries already committed, a global ecosystem built around American platforms, American software, American approval for every operational decision. Canada's commitment was supposed to lock in another 30 years of that relationship, but then cracks started to appear. Early 2024, Canada's Auditor General dropped a bombshell report. The real cost wasn't $19 billion, it was $27.7 billion, a 46% spike. Aircraft deliveries were running an average of 238 days late. The F-35's global mission-ready rate, just 36%. That number is critical. A mission-ready rate of 36% means that on any given day, nearly 2/3 of the F-35 fleet is grounded. Maintenance issues, software glitches, parts shortages, supply chain delays. For an Air Force tasked with defending the second largest country on Earth, that's not just inconvenient, it's a strategic liability. And the costs kept climbing, not just purchase costs, but life cycle costs, sustainment costs, training costs, infrastructure costs. The Parliamentary Budget Officer estimated that over the 42-year lifespan of the fleet, Canada would spend more than $77 billion Canadian dollars just to keep the F-35s operational. That's more than 3 times the original purchase price. Then in November 2024, Donald Trump won re-election. Immediately, he threatened 25% tariffs on Canadian goods and kept joking that Canada should become America's 51st state. The tone wasn't diplomatic, it was dismissive, insulting. A public reminder that Washington viewed Ottawa not as an equal partner, but as a subordinate. Political pressure inside Canada exploded. Opposition leader Mark Carney, predicted to potentially become Prime Minister, publicly declared Canada must reduce its dependence on America, not just in trade, not just in energy, but in defense. Lawmakers demanded the government review every major defense commitment, especially the F-35. The argument was simple. Why should Canada spend $77 billion on an aircraft that doesn't work reliably, can't be maintained independently, and ties Canadian sovereignty to American approval, especially when the American president openly mocks Canadian independence? In March 2025, the unthinkable happened. Ottawa made a shocking decision: review the entire F-35 deal. Suddenly, Sweden's Gripen E, the 2021 loser, was back in the game. 72 F-35s hanging in midair, $14 billion in contracts now under review. This wasn't a technical adjustment, this was a political statement. Washington got it immediately. Carney was challenging American monopoly. So why would an aircraft decision trigger such a fierce Pentagon reaction? Look at what they're really afraid of losing. Reason number 1, loss of supply chain control. Let's be clear about one thing. The F-35 isn't just an aircraft, it's a control ecosystem. Every F-35 depends entirely on Lockheed Martin for parts, software, and upgrades. All mission data flows through the Autonomic Logistics Information System controlled by America. Every flight, every mission, every sensor reading, all of it passes through American servers, processed by American algorithms, stored in American data centers. Canada wants to change weapons? Ask the Pentagon's permission. Want to do your own repairs? Not allowed. Want to share technology with other partners? Absolutely not. This isn't speculation. This is contractual reality. When Australia wanted to integrate domestically produced weapons onto their F-35s, they had to negotiate with Washington for years. When Israel wanted to install their own electronic warfare systems, they needed explicit Pentagon approval, and even then, certain modifications were forbidden. The F-35 isn't an aircraft you own. It's an aircraft you lease under American terms. But if Canada chooses the Gripen, Sweden promises 100% software source code transfer. Canada would be free to upgrade, free to choose weapons, free to maintain. No need to call home for anyone's permission. Sweden's offer is unprecedented. Full technology transfer, complete autonomy, the ability to modify, upgrade, and adapt the aircraft to Canadian needs without foreign approval. That's not just an aircraft purchase, that's sovereignty. Reason number 2, the NORAD nightmare. NORAD, North American Aerospace Defense Command, is the backbone of North American air defense. For 65 years, this system has operated on one golden rule: 100% synchronization. American fighters, American radar, American satellites, American command structure. The F-35 was designed to integrate perfectly with that ecosystem. All data shared in real time, one unified fleet, one command system. American commanders in Colorado Springs can see every Canadian F-35, track every flight, monitor every sensor input in real time. The Gripen? That's a different story. Swedish aircraft use NATO standards, but aren't directly compatible with the F-35's Link 16 combat network. That means mixed fleets, dual logistics systems, more complex pilot training, skyrocketing maintenance costs. But more importantly, it means Canada would operate fighters that Washington can't monitor continuously. This isn't just a technical concern, this is a power concern. If Canada doesn't use American aircraft, Washington loses control of their own defense system. For 65 years, NORAD has functioned as an extension of American Strategic Command. Canada contributed aircraft, personnel, and bases, but Washington maintained ultimate control over doctrine, strategy, and operational deployment. The Gripen threatens that arrangement because if Canada operates Swedish fighters with Swedish battle management systems, suddenly Ottawa has the ability to make independent operational decisions without American oversight. That's a fundamental shift in the power balance of North American defense, but these two reasons still aren't what the Pentagon fears most. The real issue lies somewhere most people don't notice: the Arctic. Reason number 3, the Arctic, the 21st century battleground. Forget about the aircraft. This isn't about the F-35 or the Gripen. This is about Arctic control and who's going to hold it. Canada controls 40% of the Arctic coastline. This region is warming faster than anywhere else on Earth. Ice is melting. New sea routes are opening up. Resources worth trillions of dollars are sitting beneath fragile ice. The Northwest Passage, historically impassable, is now navigable for several months each year. Shipping companies are already planning commercial routes that cut transit time between Europe and Asia by weeks. Beneath the ice, vast reserves of oil, natural gas, rare earth minerals, and strategic resources are becoming accessible for the first time in human history. The U.S. Geological Survey estimates the Arctic contains 13% of the world's undiscovered oil and 30% of its undiscovered natural gas. But Canada isn't the only one seeing opportunity. Russia has deployed 40% of its military forces to the Arctic, including new military bases, nuclear icebreakers, and S-400 missiles. They've reopened Soviet-era Arctic bases, built new airstrips on remote islands, stationed advanced air defense systems across their northern coastline. China, though thousands of kilometers from the Arctic, has declared itself a near-Arctic state and is building a massive icebreaker fleet. Beijing views the Arctic as critical to its Belt and Road Initiative. Chinese state-owned companies are investing billions in Arctic infrastructure, mining operations, and shipping routes. For America, the Arctic isn't just a military battleground, it's the last line of defense against ICBMs from Russia and China. The shortest path for a nuclear strike on the continental United States runs directly over the North Pole. Early warning radar systems stationed across the Canadian Arctic are America's first line of detection. And here's the critical point. If Canada uses the F-35, every Arctic patrol flight connects to American systems. The Pentagon knows where the aircraft are, what they're doing, what they're detecting, absolute control, every radar contact, every submarine detection, every airspace violation. All of it flows immediately to American command centers. But if Canada uses the Gripen, Sweden would provide the AESA radar system, the Erexus electronic warfare system, and GlobalEye battle management software, all controlled by Stockholm. Suddenly, a non-North American nation has a seat at the table in the Arctic operations room. What does this mean? Canada would share intelligence data with Sweden. When they detect Russian submarines or Chinese aircraft, the information wouldn't just go to the Pentagon. It would also go to Stockholm. The command system would no longer be totally American controlled. This is Washington's geopolitical nightmare. Geopolitical, because for the Pentagon, the Arctic isn't a place to share power. It's America's backyard, and anyone who enters, even a NATO ally, is a threat. The United States has spent 75 years building a defense architecture based on unquestioned American leadership. Allies contribute forces, but Washington controls strategy. The Gripen deal threatens that entire structure, because if Canada can operate independently in the Arctic, sharing intelligence with Sweden instead of deferring to the Pentagon, then the foundation of North American defense shifts permanently. Reason number 4, massive economic losses. Let's talk about money. If Canada cancels the remaining 72 F-35s, Lockheed Martin loses over $14 billion, but that's just the number on paper. The real consequences go much deeper. 110 Canadian companies are part of the F-35 supply chain, from Magellan Aerospace making airframe structures to Pratt & Whitney Canada producing engine components. A total of $3.3 billion in contracts over the next 30 years. If the deal falls apart, these contracts disappear. Thousands of aerospace jobs across Ontario, Quebec, and British Columbia would be at risk. But Sweden is offering something completely opposite. Saab promises to transfer the entire Gripen E production line to Canada, partner with Bombardier, Canada's iconic aerospace manufacturer, create 10,000 to 12,600 high-end aerospace jobs, 4 times more than the F-35. Not just assembly, but production from scratch. Canada would become the global Gripen hub, manufacturing aircraft not just for domestic use, but for export to Ukraine, Finland, and other NATO countries. Compared to Lockheed just letting Canada assemble parts, Saab lets Canada manufacture completely. This is industrial sovereignty, the ability to build, maintain, and export advanced military technology without foreign permission. Now let's talk operational costs. The F-35 costs $33,000 to $47,000 per flight hour. The Gripen E, just $7,500 to $15,000. Over 30 years of operation, Canada could save 50% to 70% in costs, equivalent to billions of dollars. Sweden didn't develop the Gripen to dominate the Middle East. They designed it for Scandinavia's freezing climate, exactly like Canada's Arctic. The Gripen can take off on runways just 800 meters long, while the F-35 needs a minimum of 20,400 meters. In the Arctic, where military bases are sparse and runways short, this is a life or death advantage. Moreover, the Gripen can replace an entire engine in just 40 minutes with a 6-person maintenance crew. The F-35 needs a full day and a specialized technical team. In Arctic warfare, repair speed equals survival. For range, the Gripen E reaches 1,500 kilometers without refueling, far surpassing the F-35A's 1,110 kilometers. For a vast country like Canada, every extra kilometer means millions saved in fuel costs and extended operational reach across remote territories. Sweden promises to transfer complete software source code to Canada. This means Canada is free to upgrade weapons, no permission needed from anyone, free to develop their own combat systems, free to share technology with industrial partners. Saab made an offer Lockheed Martin can't match because Lockheed's business model depends on control. Sweden's offer is built on partnership. Reason number 5, the global domino effect. This is what the Pentagon fears most, not losing one contract, but losing global credibility. Currently, 15 NATO countries use the F-35. If Canada, the closest ally founding member of NORAD, publicly rejects the F-35, the signal sent would be crystal clear. Even Canada doesn't trust the F-35. Poland is weighing the F-35 against South Korea's F-A-50. Spain hasn't decided. Greece is negotiating with France over the Rafale. If Canada flips, these countries will feel more confident saying no to Lockheed Martin. Sweden, France, South Korea would seize the opportunity. The fighter jet market, once America's private playground, would fragment. And Pentagon influence wouldn't just decline militarily, but diplomatically and economically too. So how can Sweden, a small neutral country, challenge the American superpower? The answer lies in an aircraft few expected, the Gripen E. The Gripen E isn't a stealth fighter. It doesn't have flashy fifth-generation technology. But that's exactly why it's dangerous to the Pentagon, because it doesn't need to be an F-35 to win. Rolls-Royce, a name tied to luxury and civilian aviation, stepped into the fighter jet arena and rewired the heart of the Gripen. They reworked exhaust flow management and internal cooling channels to stabilize heat output and reduce infrared visibility. This adjustment made the Gripen E significantly harder to track and target using infrared search and track systems and surface-to-air missile sensors. Systems like Russia's S-400, Pantsir S-1, and the IRST platforms integrated into aircraft like the Su-35 rely heavily on thermal cues. By masking and smoothing those cues, the Gripen gained a survivability edge that analysts quietly referred to as intelligent stealth, a form of concealment achieved through engineering rather than coatings or extreme airframe shaping. Now here's what makes Carney's decision permanent. This isn't about one contract review. This is about a fundamental shift in how Canada approaches sovereignty. For 40 years, Canada followed a predictable pattern. Buy American jets, accept American terms, operate under American control. The CF-18 was American. The F-35 was supposed to be American. But Carney changed the calculation. He didn't just question cost overruns or delivery delays. He questioned dependency itself. And once that question is asked publicly, it doesn't go away. Other NATO nations are watching: Finland, Czech Republic, Hungary, the Philippines. They're all asking the same question: why accept dependency when independence is available? Switzerland, known for precision, caution, and financial rigor, issued a warning about the F-35 in early 2024. After contracts were signed, revised cost assessments emerged. Operating expenses exceeded earlier projections. Inflation and pricing adjustments altered long-term assumptions. Sustainment costs lost their predictability. Swiss officials acknowledged something deeply uncomfortable. Full control over lifetime expenses was no longer guaranteed. For a country built on fiscal discipline, this represented a serious warning sign. The issue extended beyond money. Control became the central concern. Mission data files remained under American authority. Software updates required approval. Certain maintenance activities depended on external authorization. Ownership proved conditional. Access replaced autonomy. Those questions carried enormous weight for Canada. Unlike Switzerland, Canada cannot rely on neutrality. It must defend the world's longest coastline, patrol vast Arctic territories, and operate across extreme distances with limited infrastructure. Absolute autonomy matters. And Carney's decision reflects that priority. This is a battle between control and sovereignty, between Canada continuing as a dependent ally, following every order from Washington, or becoming an independent partner, deciding their own weapon strategy and future. This is a battle between 40 years of following America and a future where Canada controls its own destiny. And the Pentagon knows clearly, if they lose Canada here, they lose everything. Because capabilities don't disappear. Once proven, they expand. Carney didn't just review a contract. He exposed Pentagon vulnerability. He unlocked a path to independence. And the $14 billion contract collapse, that's just the beginning. Subscribe to Canada Unfiltered for more insights on how Mark Carney is reshaping North American power dynamics. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next breakdown, and drop a comment. Do you think Carney should go with the Gripen or stick with the F-35? Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.